doing? How we doing? Let's pull up the chat. Go Bills. Man, you root for who you gotta root for, man. You do what you gotta do. I got no hard feelings versus the Bills. Like, they're a better team than my Pats this year. Alrighty. People coming in, filtering in. We go. We got something. We got something to track. That actually looks like it may fall through. Maybe we'll see. Still got a little bit of time for this to go south, don't we? And when I mean south, I mean figuratively. Ideally south, literally, but we'll see. I like where we are. I like where we are. I think we are in a good position if you live, 495 westward, to get some snow out of this. But at the end of the day, right, this, again, I've said it from the beginning, this is an interior snowstorm. So this is, this is not an I-95 event. I know some people have gotten a little bit of a false hope between the NAM or the HRO over the past couple of days, but this has never been an I-95 snowstorm. It's just not the setup. It's just not the setup. Again, just look at the setup for what it is, right? Not a massive cold air source in place, and 588 Southeast Ridge. This is just, it's never been, this has never been a I-95 snowstorm. Never been an I-95 snowstorm. And just where the position of the Vort is too. You can't get a snowstorm with Southeast Ridge, strong Southeast Ridge, and a little bit lack of cold air, but it's hard to get it's hard to get a full-on I-95 snowstorm without threading the needle perfectly. And that's what we don't have. We don't have the perfect positioning. So as we progress, we can kind of see some of the changes that have gone on since yesterday. What you notice is we're holding more energy back. So we're holding our vortex back. So typically when you see that, you think, well, does that mean that we're amplifying our system more? Shouldn't we head more interior? Yes, but what's happening is the reason we're holding more back is we're actually stretching out. We're stretching out some of our vorticity, and in doing that, we're delaying amplification. So we're pressing the angle of which this northern vort is pressing down is preventing our storm from amplifying as fast and stretching out our energy. So we're holding more energy back. So in the process of doing this, in the process of holding more energy back, what's been happening is we've been delaying our amplification of our low pressure system. So in doing so, we already knew that we were probably going to mix anyways. And in doing this, while mixing, we've been able to make sure that, right, we were going to mix anyways for a lot of these people. If you live here, we were going to mix anyways. So why not? Might as well. We're going to do that anyway. So let's sacrifice that. And if we hold more energy back, we can delay amplification, ramp up the low pressure a little bit later when it's in a more favorable spot. And that way we can get backside snow. And that's what's happening. So by holding more energy back, we're stretching out our vortex, and we're allowing more energy to get held back. We're delaying the amplification of our upper level low and our low pressure system. And in doing so, we're allowing more snow to get held on the backside of our system. And notice as this moves through, we start upper level low, then starts to intensify. Really, once it gets into Canada, really intensifies and closes off. And in doing so, we're able to hold on to some snow on the backside of this system as the upper level low intensifies. More notice, right? We're intensifying, but it really gets going as it passes through and past us. You know what I mean? As it works through us, through our area. So on the backside of what's left, you're able to get some backside snow. So that's a tricky part of this is going maybe from snow to rain to snow, or rain to snow, or wherever you live, or maybe just all snow, depending on where you live. The tricky part with this setup is is figuring out how much snow is actually going to stick, because there's going to be a period when the rain switches back to snow. If you're not get in good banding, we don't have good lift in the atmosphere. We don't have good forcing, our omega that we look for in soundings, and we're not cool. We're not cool enough throughout our column. It's just going to be really heavy, wet snow. And if we're too warm, throughout our column, and it's going to be really hard, especially after just raining, to be able to accumulate. We'd have to snow really heavy in order to make up for some of that. And that's the tricky part with backside snow. And that's why some of the snow maps can be deceiving. It's not going to be a 10-to-1 snow, probably be a little bit less. It will compact pretty quickly for sure. So if you're gonna want to get accurate snow measurements, if for some it may not matter, because maybe you only do see like 6 to 8 hours of snow. But for those that are all snow, you're probably do want to clear the snowboard once. If you do have a snowboard, or clear wherever you're seeing snow, you're probably going to want to clear that. Probably going to want to clear that once. Nice video, thank you. But I am still somewhat optimistic, even though, right, I gotta lay it clear. I can't just say, well, it looks good, everything's trending great, because that's not, if it were, then this would be an all snow big time for all of the Northeast, which it isn't. But what we do have is this consistent, the one trend that has, right? What is a trend? What isn't a trend? What is a trend is this piece pressing down at a different angle and pushing this. We're pushing, right, the northern edge of our vort. We're pushing this further south, and we're stretching out our vorticity. And in doing so, we're holding more vorticity back. And that allows us to hold more vorticity and energy left back as our low pressure moves through and amplifies. And our low pressure is going to stretch out. The key is, and this is what makes it a little bit complicated and makes me a little bit uncertain, right? Don't focus on exactly where the rain snow line is on this specific model run, but notice, follow the low pressure. What happens? Notice, right? Looks like a pretty normal low pressure system, but what happens is it kind of gets stretched out a little bit. Right around here, it's a little bit stretched out. And we can see the 993 clearly here, but a little bit stretched out, and allows some dynamics. Right, we still leave good dynamics behind, and part of that is we have a pretty stretched out system at 500 millibars. We don't have a clear consolidated upper level low still at this point, even though we have an intensifying low pressure system, which you can see visibly, and it becomes a little bit more consolidated once we get to Monday afternoon and evening. And as it's really starting to ramp up and consolidate, notice, right, the upper level low really starts to consolidate Monday afternoon. And as that happens, right, our low pressure really starts to intensify. Notice we go from a 997 1 a 2 a.m. was it 2 a.m. Monday morning, tomorrow morning, we go from 997 to a 984 in what is that, 15 hours or so, maybe less, 12 hours, 14 hours. Yeah, it looks like 14 hours. We intensify 10 millibars. So during that process, that's allowing us, right? We're gonna filter in more cold air just through dynamic cooling, intensifying low pressure system, and also being on the cooler side of the system at this point. Now low pressure is a little bit farther away at this point, so we're going to be filtering in less warm air, and the upper level low is no longer overhead as well. That's the key, and that allows us to still have, right, we're well saturated enough we can pull up soundings. what was it? HR. We can pull up soundings. We're still plenty well saturated, and we still have energy. We still have energy to work with. Pull up a sounding. Right, still plenty well saturated. Relatively cold, a little bit warm, so this is probably pretty wet snow. But we do have pretty good lift. We do have good forcing. So here's our Dendra Gross zone with a little bit. It's typically close to where it is, but we're pretty, we're a little warm from 700 down to the surface. Plenty cold enough to snow. That's not a concern here on the sounding. I'm just pointing out that it is a little bit of a heavier. This is definitely a little bit of a heavier, wetter snow sounding too, because we're also 34 at the surface. So this is definitely a heavy, wet snow. Probably like 7, 8 to 1 ratios. Even with a really good, a really pretty good look in the Dendritic Gross tone. So there's still, we can take another sounding as well here. New Hampshire, that's a little bit cooler, from 7 to 850. And that's a pretty good heavy snow sounding. Still a little bit warm. You can see a little bit of a warm tongue at 850 to 900, but definitely not warm enough to rain, and also still, but still not cold enough to make it like a 12 to 1 snow ratio. That's probably still like an 8 to 9 to 1 snow ratio. This is going to be heavier, wetter snow. So any 10 to 1 maps you can see, you can kind of disregard them. And here's kind of the thing too. HRR, notice more than the name, it kind of wavers back and forth. You usually don't see this. It will probably just be one larger area of low pressure and be centered in the middle. So it's hard to say. It's hard to hold a lot of weight on the HRR because when you see a model move that much back and forth, it's hard to trust it. But when I'm just looking at soundings, I'm not looking for the exact location of the rain snow line. We can look at that all day long, but I'm more just looking for how well saturated are we on the backside. Like I care for that because a lot of times backside snow or back end snow, it can be difficult to still be well saturated when you have cold air rushing in to try to dry up the warmer saturated air you had in place before, and so that can make it a little bit tricky. But the good news is, for the last event and for this one, it looks like we're going to be pretty well saturated. You can take a look here. That's actually not as good on the NAM, but the NAM has kind of been a little bit jumpy too. So, we'll take a look here. And that's a pretty good sounding. I don't know what the NAM is doing there. I don't know what the NAM is doing with an elevated mix layer, but it's interesting. We don't really care what's happening up here. We just care. Here's our Dendritic Gross zone. So we don't really care what's going on up there. So this is pretty well saturated. From mid-levels down, very well saturated. So not a big concern here. And when it comes to snowfall totals, again, this is a little dry in the upper levels, but I'm not sure if I really buy that. And you can clearly see still have a lot of vorticity to work with. And you can see that visible here on the rain snow map. Probably, honestly, based on, if I'm looking at 500, probably still snowing. All the way and back into here. So we're probably still snowing, honestly. Back into upstate New York at this point. Still have a good amount of upper level energy. Maybe a little bit drier at that point, so maybe like some elevated snowflakes that aren't hitting the ground. But to me, there's still some vorticity to work with. Definitely plenty of upper level energy still to work with. And then when we look at the mid levels too, you can see here at 700, this is where we look for our banding. So to the right, here's our, you can see not really one big time band. It looks like some bands that will be moving through. And then looks like there could be actually a pretty decent could be a pretty decent band on the backside. When we look at the backside snow, we can kind of see that, right? This band right here, we should use a different color, something we can get a little bit more specific feature. Looks like we do have a little bit of a band right here, which probably that's probably pretty warm, but probably dumping snow, you know, all across. Probably good. We can see or verify that on radar, or simulated radar. It's hard to say, but that's why you don't always look at P-type maps. But I would say there's a pretty good band. Oh my god, I would argue. Wait, look at just looking at seven. Oh, this is also. Oh no, this is reflectivity. I would say there's a pretty good band going on. You know, right across here at this time too. So you don't want to always hold too much stock into the P-type maps. You got to be able to decipher what's going on. You know, you can see at 700. Looks pretty good, right? Close off at 700 too. So we're gonna stack. Looks like we're gonna stack our upper level low over our 700 low and close off at 700. Interesting. Yeah, so this will be a really good snowstorm for Maine for sure. Maine will probably get the best out of this. But you know, when it comes to snowfall totals, I got a little sidetracked. I do think I think it's widespread. I think it's a widespread 6 to 12 for like most. This whole region. I think it's like a widespread 6 to 12. I don't think they're gonna have a lot of these folks are gonna have any problem hitting that. I really don't. Bearing anything drastic, I think it's a widespread 6 to 12 inches. I don't think anybody gets into the teens really. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked even if nobody gets above like 10 inches. If depending on how wet the snow is going to be, I really think this is a good opportunity for a lot of people to get like 6 to 9 inches of snow, and then maybe some higher elevations can get like 9 to 12 inches of snow. But I think just in general, it's a widespread 6 to 12 inches for snow. I think that's a good jackpot area. And then this is the question mark. Oh, come on, don't. I think this area right here is the real question mark. Are we talking 1 to 3, 3 to 6, coating to an inch? It's hard. I think there's really, or could some people even get over 6 inches in this area? I think that's a real possibility. But this is definitely the area where there's most uncertainty right now. It will be a little bit difficult to say, and it's hard to say. Again, it will be raining, and it's going to flip to snow. It's going to take a little bit for the snow to stick after that point. So, really any of the snowfall, even with the Kuchera and even with the dynamic, like the internal model ratio you see on the HRR, I would really take like an inch off. Anything, like anything that's like you see like 4, 5, 6 inches, I would take like an inch off. And then maybe it could be more. But like I don't have an exact calculation for you to give, but I would lean a little bit under when it comes to a lot of these snowfall totals you're seeing, just because it's one thing for the environment it created, how much snowfall to accumulate, but it's also probably not accounting for how wet the surface will be. So probably an in-between of the positive snow depth accumulation maps and Kuchera, or that total dynamic snowfall ratio the HRR has. I think like 1 or 2 other models have. I think an in between of that will be good to use when it comes to snowfall totals. I'm trying to figure out what models are actually showing. Again, I already have a pretty good idea in terms of jackpot snow. Now it's going to be me figuring out what exactly I want to do with Central Mass, Northern Connecticut, Northern Rhode Island, Eastern Mass, far southeastern New Hampshire, Northeast PA, Hudson Valley. I think those are the locations that I have to figure out. I'll make the snow map tomorrow, and we'll go from there. When does it start tomorrow? When does it start? All right. Yeah. We'll have no problem getting the snow map out in time. Just checking. Just checking. Make sure I get plenty of time to get the snow map out. Yep. So we'll put it out. Tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon. I'll put the snow map out at some point. I was hoping to do it on stream, but I want to see a little bit of real time data. I don't want to be as it's snowing, make the snowfall map. That's just kind of cheating. I only ever do that if I'm super preoccupied or super busy. That's the only time when that's the only time when it gets delayed, the snowfall map. But I have a pretty good idea. I know the jackpot area. I got a good feeling about that. Well, I don't know for sure, but I have a good feeling about the jackpot area. Now it's just figuring out. These folks right here. It's right here. I have a pretty good idea. That winch, like this area right here. These folks always get. These folks always make out really well, but this is probably highest area of uncertainty right now. Far, 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 far northwest New Jersey, northeastern PA. I guess we could swing this back a little bit farther. Northeast PA, Hudson Valley, central Hudson Valley, northern Connecticut, northern Rhode Island, and a lot of Massachusetts. And far southeastern New Hampshire, southern Maine. I think that's the greatest area of uncertainty right now. I can see anywhere from a coating to an inch to over 6 inches. Realistically, in any of these areas, maybe not the southern extent of this area I drew, but I could definitely see, really anybody in here getting at least 3 to 6 inches, realistically. But I'm still hesitant to go, really full in when it comes to the storm because, again, it's hard to trust backside snow. It really is, especially when it's a wet snow too. This isn't just we have cold air in place and the upper level low is going over. It's not quite like that. We're raining and then transitioning to a wet snow after. That's the tricky part. That's the tricky part to figure out. We had RGM too. We can look at RGM. RGM's been a little bit bullish over the past couple runs, similar to HRR. But let's see here at 500. We close off. Interesting. We close off at 500 on the Reggie. Open back up, close off again. Interesting. But same thing with the RGM. Similar changes we've been seeing. Yeah, it is a tricky forecast. I want to, obviously we want the snow, but figuring out, it's just me trying to figure out what is wrong with the models right now. That's all I'm trying to figure out. Where are the models most wrong? And it's a little difficult to decipher at the moment because I have some past history of different events and how they've gone right and wrong, and it's hard to say exactly how it's going to verify as well. Let's see. Right, you can see the changes we have here. We're sliding this piece further south and east. So you think, oh, if we're sliding this piece further southeast, then what? There's less. We have less pressing down on the system. Well, that's correct. That's a good point. However, we have a stream interaction on the tail end of our vort on the northern side of this system. So what's happening is we're just stretching out our system. And And this is allowing, right? Remember, holding back more energy farther southwestward, holding back more vorticity. So when our low pressure does really start to intensify, low pressure isn't going to be super consolidated at first, and it's going to be a little bit of a wider area of low pressure. And so we're intensifying low pressure system just off the coast of the Cape with all this leftover vorticity to work with. You can see this. All this left over and intensifying low pressure system, off the coast. It's probably somewhere around here. And we're still going to be able to be snowing because we're now in the colder spot, more favorable to see snow, and still have pretty good dynamics left over. And that's why RGM is excited too. And then maybe you get a little bit of ocean enhancement if you're lucky. But actually, the wind won't be as favorable at that, will it? Will be northeast wind. So it could get a little bit of ocean enhancement too. Not necessarily ocean effect snow, but ocean enhanced to an extent. NYC, no, not really. Sorry, my man. I don't think this is New York City. Maybe some flurries, but I doubt accumulating snow. I really doubt accumulating snow for New York City. And you can see here on the RGM too, right? Stretching out the low pressure kind of, it's bouncing around. It's bouncing around the convection a little bit. I think the low pressure is honestly chasing convection a little bit here. And our low pressure may be tucked in a little bit more, which may allow to pull in more cold air further southeast rather than elongate. So that'll be interesting to watch. I mean, really, the low pressure is in a good spot the whole storm. It's just the upper level energy. The low pressure is in a really good spot for most of the storm. And curious to do. Do we start as snow as well? Starts as snow just to add on something beforehand could be crucial too. For some people, they get an extra inch or two of snow, and then you add on 3-4 inches on the backside. Then you could get like 5 or 6 inches, or 4 to 6, whatever. And you can get a little bit more snow from the front end. So interesting that see our snow break out ahead of a system, and we fill in all across. Right, we fill in snow all across, move northeastward, and as warm air continues to surge, thanks to our awesome southeast ridge, and the placement of our upper level low, thanks to our awesome southeast ridge, we're going to surge warm air further north until we start to pull out further east with low pressure, and then snow fills in on the backside. So don't take this for exact, right? This is just different model runs. We've gone through a bunch of different model runs now. This is probably about as far south as I think we will see, but I'm not sure exactly. That we won't see some flurries. Maybe close to the coast, but not exactly on the coast. Got call Southern New Hampshire. I think Southern New Hampshire could be in the sweet spot for this. Really, it depends on where in Southern New Hampshire. I think the further southeast you are, a little bit closer to the ocean, not as favorable. But I mean, it just happens to be on this frame. This is not a coincidence, or this is a coincidence. But I mean, realistically, we could end up seeing this. I want to draw this bigger, honestly. I think this is our sweet spot. It's not as clean as I wanted it to be. I think something like this is probably a sweet spot. This is where, I'm going to put 6 to 12 inches. I pretty much already know that. Northern Bristol County, a chance of Tough one, my man. Tough one. I don't think this is. I don't think this is your one. I think you could finish as some snow, but you're gonna rain so much. I don't. I doubt how much you're actually gonna be able to get in accumulating. I might go like coding to 2 or coding to 1 for you. Um, with maybe like a 1 to 3 ceiling. I don't think you're gonna be able to pull out a lot with this one. I think you got a better shot with the next one though. Yeah, yeah, Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, we're gonna talk about Wednesday, Thursday in a second too. I really think Wednesday, Thursday is the best chance for I-95 to see the most to not maybe see the most snow, but to see the most snow they've seen all year long, which is I mean no snow, but this is the best chance we've got yet for accumulating snow. Albany, Albany always has problems. Always do. But you may be just far enough north in Albany to sweet spot this one. Maybe you're not in the town of or in the city of Albany, so Albany Metro. Hopefully on the east side of Albany. I feel like just northeast of Albany makes it out so much better always. What's up, John? I would say, probably 6 to 12. My gut would say would trim it down and say 5 to 8 because Albany never something always goes wrong in Albany. It feels like always goes wrong, but I think that whole region I outlined, I think 6 to 12 is a pretty good bet. Probably more like 6 to 10. 6 to 9, 6 to 10 for most, and then 8 to 12 for places with more elevation. Yeah, I probably this could has a really good shot at being a Berkshire special, honestly. But I think maybe the best spot could be, like interior southeastern New Hampshire, southern Maine, potentially, just because they can get into the first part of this system and then get into the second part as well. And I think that's the key. Right, our low pressure is going to intensify, kind of slow down a little bit, intensification, and then take off again. Don't the low's bouncing around. It's just chasing convection, so don't really look too much far into that. How's Concord look? Concord looks pretty good. I think Concord it could be maybe the best spot for this storm. On paper, it's hard to say exactly, but I think Concord. I think you can throw down it. I think you can throw down 6 to 12 for Concord. I think that's a good bet. 6 to 12 is a really good bet. I think for Concord, especially for people that stay all snow, they're not going to have to worry about that stall period where it's snowing and you're not getting any accumulation because the ground is wet. That will be a real advantage for people. And how much snow melts too is a question. And one thing you have to consider: models could be underestimating the cold air just a little bit because of the snowpack already. So people that have a good amount of snowpack already may get a little bit of an advantage. That typically becomes more an advantage. We have a bigger high pressure, bigger cold air source locked into place. But that could be a little bit something models are underestimating a little bit too. I noticed the HRR, the 0Z was like it was like 3 or 4 degrees too cold on 18Z for my house, but it was like 2 degrees too warm. It was 2 or 3 degrees too warm for 0Z. So it looks like we're a little bit too drastic of a change potentially on the 0Z HRR. It's hard to find. I don't want to get caught on the models so much. I don't want to get caught too far in buying into what I see on models. And so that's why I'm best trying to really break down what I see and try to figure out where these models are wrong. Trying to, get every page of knowledge that I have in my brain. I'm trying to flip all those pages as much as I can, as fast as I can, to try to figure out where exactly models are wrong. Because once I figure out where they're wrong, I can figure out what's actually going to happen where it's right. And that's my greatest strength when it comes to forecasting, is using that to try to pinpoint where the heavy snow is going to be and how much, and etc. Rain, snow line. How quickly does the storm shut down the Berks? I think Monday afternoon, right? Looks like, yeah, Monday afternoon. Again, pretty well saturated. We can um, look at Reggie. Actually, did I? I think we looked at GFS. Actually, we did. We kind of did look at GFS, but not really. We didn't give its full attention, I think. RGM. Let's take a look. I'm pretty sure RGM was well saturated at 18Z, although I didn't officially confirm a sounding then. So let's take a look. Let's take a Burke sounding. Alrighty. Yeah, still well saturated. I mean, I'd ideally be I'd like to be a couple degrees more saturated. I'd like 29 over 27. But still very well saturated. This is when, yeah, 4 p.m. Monday. Still, look across, northern central Mass. Yeah, well saturated. Still, to me, these look really good. Still plenty well saturated. Right, we look at -20. Boom, down to -10. Right around here. Yeah, so it's decently, pretty average spot for the dendrogrossum would be around 550 to 700. So Monday afternoon, Monday evening, probably always ends usually a couple hours earlier than what malls had, and this is also a 3-hour accumulation. So it looks like Monday evening, potentially Monday afternoon, Monday evening. And here's what I was talking about. I guess I want you to understand with snowfall maps, right? You got to be able to identify, in order to actually understand how much snow, models are trying to show. Right? Here's Kuchera, here's 10-1. You can see the difference. A little bit more robust all around, and closer to 10-1 for higher elevations. Kuchera, and it really helps. Just comparing the two helps identify where the rain snow line is. And then also from here, you can actually also do. We don't have positive accumulated snow depth, but for me, I would be like, okay, probably 4, probably like 3.5, 3, 12, like 11, 10.5 or something. It's a little bit, it's not exactly scientific, but you got to be able, just internally be able to moderate what snowfall maps are actually suggestive of. Chances of double digits near northern Berks. I think there's a good chance. I think there's a pretty good chance. I would still lean towards the middle, but I think 6 to 12 is a really good bet for the Berks. And Berks with really good elevation, I would say 7 or 8 to 12, probably. But I think 6 to 12s for the Berks is almost a lock at this point. I'd be shocked if they didn't see 6 to 12 inches. Here's the GFS. With the GFS has positive accumulated snow. So what we can do is take an in between. We still completely clear out. Total, you can see the difference. See how it's a little bit less, and so I would go with like an in between. I think this is ridiculous. Sometimes I don't really think this works all the time, but it is a good indicator that it is going to be pretty wet snow. So I would kind of go like an in between. I think the GFS is a little weak on some of these totals just to begin with, and honestly, I think that would even out basically with the Kuchera. So I would say this, maybe right around on par. Small things. I would use like an in between. If the GFS wasn't so weak on the totals, I think, but it's like it's like 2 to 3 inches under on a lot of spots. So I think the in between of Kuchera and like positive snow depth is good to you, but I can kind of figure it out as well when I look at when I look at 500, 700 and duration. and then just looking at how long it snows on P-type maps, and then taking soundings to figure out how much it actually is snowing when it shows it. From there, I can kind of figure it out. Yeah, Thursday storm. Yeah, we're going to discuss that in a second. We're definitely going to discuss that in a second. Answering anybody's last questions, or maybe not last questions, but answering anybody's questions they got with Thursday, or not Thursday, tomorrow into Monday first. I want to try to. Does NAM have accumulated positive snow depth too? Yeah, it does. So yeah, so I would see this and I see this and I go like in between basically. It's the same though for Worcester. Interesting. Doesn't change at all for Worcester. So I think six. I think 6 to 12 is a good bet. I think 6 to 12 is a pretty good bet. That's the next one. I want a sounding. Pretty good. Yeah, well saturated. Very well saturated. So GFS too. Yeah, very well saturated. So I mean, none of these soundings aren't pretty well saturated. And it's not like with oh no, go back. And it's not like we're on the line here either, right? Look at this. Right, still a lot of space, just all only way up to the surface. So we're not super warm, a little bit warm. Ideally, we'd be like here. That's ideally where we kind of want to be. This is a little warm, like a few, 3-4 degrees, a little warmer than I'd like to be in terms of getting good snowfall growth. But listen, hey, with this winter, we'll work with it. We'll work with it. Still can get accumulating snowfall after this, but there just may be a little bit of a buffer period in between the switching from rain to snow. To live with that. At least I will. Burks, not so much. Go back and forth, and then we'll talk about Thursday in a second. Closer to a second. Yeah, but nothing significant on the GFS. Again, stretching out, kind of notice this digging a little bit further southwest, holding more back. You can see that on the creek. One thing you can take away from P-type map, or I guess you can't. Thought you could. I mean, it's not all that different. Let's check 500. I want verification. Stand corrected. Didn't hold back as much. At first, we were holding back more. I stand corrected. That's fine. I like being wrong, because when I'm wrong, I can learn from it faster. But yeah, there's like nothing to move me here. Round changes. All right, let's talk about Thursday. Let's do it. Let the people know. Let the people know that we are going Thursday. Talking about Thursday system now. There we go. Alrighty. Let's do it. So again, here's what I like about Thursday. It's the cold air we have in place. All right, this big time, right? We have this big time Arctic air in place, right? You can see our confluence. All right, we can see our vortex. And we get high pressure to filter in. So we get a nice, good high pressure in place out ahead of this event. And this is why I like this system. Uh, we actually have good cold air to work with out ahead of this system. So we're big time, high pressure out ahead of this system. We can see that here, right? Our 1032, 1034, whatever. And so what allows us to do is now we can get actual cold air damming with this system. And so we bring down our cold air, where our filters down to the lower levels, and we can stay colder at the surface until the upper level low moves through, because we're not going to be worrying about our mid-level temperatures warming. See, it's actually, I just want to see changes. Not ideal. Not the greatest changes. I mean, the southeast ridge is not as prevalent, but we didn't get the greatest run-around changes. We kind of consolidate a little bit more. But again, you don't want to get caught up in just one run-around change 4.5 days out. 4.5 days out. Can stay. Yeah, models do just going to talk about that. Models do tend to underestimate cold air damming. So you can tend to stay colder for sometimes a little bit longer. And then models suggest, we're going to be able to stay snow out front, get front end thump. We can take us outing if we're cold. Right? Notice we're pretty cold. Notice we're right. We wanna head over this line, right? But we want to head over that freezing line. But we have cold air damming in place, right? We have cold air, so we're able to cool at the surface, and probably a little bit of dynamic cooling here because I clicked on heavier sounding. But it can stay colder, and it prevents you from, until that upper level low goes overhead, right? Until the upper level energy passes latitude, you can stay cold out in front. All right, so anybody in here, right, stay in snow or at least frozen precip? And notice our upper level low, right? Similar latitude, right? So because we're staying in the mid levels, we're staying cold enough. You can see our mid level low to our 700 low until this passes. With latitude, then you stay cold. Everybody in here stays cold. And ultimately, we'll have to see exactly where our Thursday, we're still getting it sampled, so we can see what we have sampled. Currently, we're still getting sampling to happen as we speak, and actually, we honestly even haven't got a lot of it. 0Z was some of the first data we have with sampling, but we'll get a much better idea tomorrow when it comes to sampling. And then after the system passes Monday, everything will become pretty clear. It should be pretty clear. Variables that can change this after, right? Pieces diving in from our western ridge in place, right? The tail end of this vort, figuring out this whole tail end of this vort is really complicated, and figuring that part out is also going to be an important part. And then also notice there's little consolidated areas of upper level energy that the GFS is consolidating, which is interesting. This is really a specific model, me breaking it down every little piece, but every little piece matters, makes a difference. So I'm trying to add up everything where the GFS can go wrong. This is what I do when I look at models. I'm looking at everywhere the model can go wrong, and then regardless behind it, probably going to be some really good cold air that gets in behind the system. But again, right, so with cold air damming, we can filter in the cold air from our high pressure, right? You can see our confluence into place, so it forces this upper level load to budge through, and it can't, so it kind of has to, stall out. Not stall out, I use poor choice of words, but it's has trouble just barging on through. So it will eventually, but the confluence is going to hold that off, and allow cold air to get out in front ahead of this system and sit in front of our system. So people that on the right front quadrant of this system are going to be able to get a really good front end thump of snow, I think. And we're going to be plenty cold enough. And this is why figuring out where the upper level low is key, because the further east we do, the more snow we can get. The further south our high pressure can get as well. That will be key, right? So figuring out exactly, similar to the previous system, how much farther can we dig this? How much farther can we dig this confluence? Can we dig it further south so we can force the system? We can de-amplify it a little bit more, sacrifice the ceiling of our system for us staying all snow for longer. And honestly, with the southeast region place and such a dynamic upper level low, I don't think it's going to be that big of a concern in terms of when I say sacrificing the ceiling, meaning not reaching, like instead of 2 feet, like 1.5 feet. That's not I don't know if that's the case or not, really. I don't think this is a 2-foot system, but that's not the point. So when I say sacrifice the ceiling, that's what I'm talking about, right? De-amplifying our VORT a little bit in sacrifice of staying colder for longer, staying on the right side, not literally, figuratively, staying on the right side of the rain snow line for longer. That's ideally what we want to do with this system, and we can compare it to Canadian. You can see where this Canadian's similar, a little bit less amplified compared to 12Z. 0Z pushed this upper level low a lot further southeast, and you can see the confluence too, much more put together on the Canadian this run, right? You can see our confluence means our high is further south. We can show you here. I can show you on P-type map. Notice our high. Will it show it? Where's our high pressure? There it is. Notice our high 1030, right? The center of our high pressure was right here. That was the center of our high pressure on the last run, the Canadian. Now on this run, notice, right, further south. Now our high pressure is sitting here. So we're getting more cold air to get out in front. We have more confluence, more to push the system further south, southeast, and prevent it from, barging its way far north, the upper level low, as far as it wants to go. So that's a good change right there on the Canadian, and it's just close, man. It's close and it's, when I say close, it's not that close, but it's close for the time frame we have. 4 days of model run changes to go still. Really good run to run changes on the Canadian. The way we're tilting our VORT much better, much less amplified, and that allows us, again, this is just the run to run change. It's not verbatim for what's going to happen, but it is a run to run change we like to see. And you can see that visibly on the P-type map. We want to break that down too, which I know you all love to do. You can see the snow stay rain snow line a little bit further southeast too. P-type map does match up with the upper level low, or at least at 500. The P-type map matches up with the 500 millibar look as well. And let's take a look at the Euro. We only have so far out. A little bit more amplified on this run below. We can't break that down, so we'll go to 12Z. No problem. Go to 12Z. Alrighty. It's gonna seriously. Yeah, we were much more amplified at 12Z. You can see the difference between last night's Euro run, which we broke down on stream as well. A little bit more amplified. The tilt being much more amplified allows the upper level low to be in a less favorable position for the rain snow line to slide further southeast. The upper level low being more amplified, a little bit more vertical, allows the rain snow line to pull further northwest, so we don't get as long as a front end thump at a minimum, and we lessen our chances of being all for the duration of all snow. And yeah, again, even with this kind of setup, I'd still think, regardless, still going to get a front end thump out in front. You can see that right there. Just like, that'd be like Wednesday night, I guess. Still get a front end thump. Still get a front end thump. You get cold air locked in from our high pressure. You get cold air to travel through the low levels of the atmosphere, and that can help allow us to stay cold in the low levels of the atmosphere enough to the point where you can get front end snow. And this is the kind of system where we'll get some Virga probably too out ahead of it, where you'll see radar snowflakes not reaching the ground because it'll be too dry because of the cold air. Well worth it though, it will be. And then the warm air surges. So that's just this specific model run. And this is why I continue to say, I think we're about as worst case scenario as we can be right now. I don't think there's much room, unless, again, I want to see the upper level energy completely sampled first. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but bearing anything drastic with the upper level energy, I don't think there's a ton of room. I don't think there's a ton of room for really come too much further west than what like the current Euro and GFS have, to be honest. I don't think there's a ton of room for it to come much further west. Again, bearing anything drastic with how the upper level energy is sampled tonight into tomorrow. So with this system, what actually, besides me talking what may seem like gibberish, I think I'm explaining it pretty clear. And I'm not talking super high level stuff either, so it's not like I'm talking about anything too special. But for a more clear answer, at this point, I think there's a good chance. I think there's a good chance from I-95. I think there's a good chance of a front end thump for I-95 at a minimum for all these folks. I think there's a pretty good chance that we can stay all snow in the beginning, in the minimum. I think there's a chance for a front end thump with this one. Again, I want to see the upper level energy sampled first to see completely sampled. We're starting to get sampling tonight, but we'll get much better sampling with tomorrow's data, however you want to say it. And from there, we can get a little bit better of idea. And then after the storm passes on Monday, I think Tuesday, we'll have a pretty good idea whether or not if this is going to be a system where we're staying all snow, or at least have a chance to stay all snow, or if we're just going it's just going to be front end thump and then switch to rain, which, hey, is better than just being all rain like many have been most of this winter. So there's a positive. Again, I think this is the best chance we've had all winter, which isn't saying a lot, but it's true. Best chance we've had all winter for I-95 to see accumulating snow. I think it's a pretty good setup. We have true cold air with our high pressure locked into place, and that's the key. That's the key with this system. Big time, pretty dynamic, upper level low. I'm curious to see, I guess this piece we'll have to watch too, because this piece is going to work as a stream interaction to the backside of this board. It's going to allow this piece to amplify. Otherwise, if we didn't have this piece at all, I'd have no doubts about this being all snow. But this piece, is helping to help amplify the system more, and causing some troubles in terms of allowing I-95 to stay all snow. Again, I would favor for most snow still. Still got to favor the interior a little bit at the moment. So I would say still would favor these places to see the most snow. I would favor northwest of I-95 to see the most snow. But I really do think I-95 has a good shot to see a front end thump with this one, just at a minimum. And I don't think, I want to see the upper level energy sampled I want to, because that will help confirm some things that I see with the setup, and we get much better data, because there's no sampling that really goes on in that upper Alaska area into British Columbia. We really don't get a lot of good sampling because not a lot of people live there, not a lot of stuff. We don't have a lot of weather data to be gathered from there. And I think we'll get much better data tomorrow. But I do think best chance of accumulating snow we've had all winter for I-95 from Philly northward. Best chance. Still favors the interior for in terms of all snow at the moment, but this is we're gonna have more opportunity to, stay at least snow in the beginning. I guess not staying snow, at least begin as snow for I-95. Cool there. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good cool there in a place. It's pretty good cool there, and you can see this. You can see pretty visibly here the southeast ridge work doing its work, right, and it just allows, boom, allows to pull up, this warm air thanks to our nice little friend of a southeast ridge. 4+ days for good changes. Yeah, we still have 4 days. 4 days. 4 days of changes. Until Wednesday p.m. to Thursday. So we still have a good amount of changes that could be in store. And again, I think the biggest changes we'll see, if we do see them, will probably be tomorrow. As our energy is getting sampled. And then after the storm moves through on Monday night, we could see some changes there as well. I do think there's room for changes for sure. There's definitely still some wiggle room as we're 4 days out. What do we need? What do we need to happen if we want to be all snow, or maybe not I-95, but close to I-95, and to re-emphasize, right? We want this polar vortex up here. We want this to press down a little bit more. We want this to press down a little bit more. That will lock in our high pressure and cold air for a little bit longer. So even if we can't get a ton of changes in the upper level energy, even though this pushing further south will de-amplify our system a little bit more, we will allow more cold air to get locked into place out ahead of this event and stay snow for longer. And then combine that, we would like the southeast ridge to back off just a little bit. So back off our 588 just a little bit more, right? We know we're going to have a southeast ridge in place. We're not denying that. That's just there. That's just part of the setup, and that's part of the future setups. But we do want just to back off a little bit, ideally, so we don't amplify our upper level lows so much. And then ideally, these changes can allow us to get our upper level low, which has failed to consolidate fully yet. We can push it a little bit further southeast, maybe not that much. That'd be pretty drastic. But we can push it a little bit further. Actually, that theoretically could happen. But we can push this a little bit further southeast. We can get more favorable position. So by the time the upper level low passes, instead of flipping to rain, it's just passing over us. So we dry out a little bit, but stay pretty much all snow the whole way through. So we can just slide the upper level low a few hundred miles southeast, even just a little bit more. That can allow us to stay all snow for a lot more locations closer to I-95. Because once this upper level low does consolidate too, it is really going to take off. And again, this is more assuming it is this amplified. Once it does start to consolidate, you can see it's going to become east of a storm as it moves into southeastern Canada. And then from there, we're going to have really good cold air to work in behind that, too. I mean, look, we got our 504 line. We got our 504 line, like a few hundred miles northeast of Montreal. Maybe more than that. Yeah, probably about that, actually. And that's visible. That's some real good cold air. Real good cold air. So with this kind of air, with this kind of cold air in place and a southeast ridge, you can really see some dynamic storm systems. You could really get something pretty big to happen down the line. So it's a little bit early. I don't see it clear. So maybe something on the 28th, maybe something could happen, but I still don't think there's anything super clear yet beyond next Wednesday, Thursday. Again, I like the setup. I think it's promising, and I think it's something we can work with. Now, if we can just get this piece to press down a little bit more, that'd be wonderful. And get this southeast ridge to back off. That would also be wonderful. Not back off completely. Just a little bit. Slide our upper level low further southeast. And that's the magic. That's how we get this done with this setup. That's the key. We got questions. We got questions about Wednesday, Thursday. I can't tell you how much snow you're going to see, or maybe you got questions. You got Monday too. If you Monday or tomorrow, Monday, you got any questions about that storm too? Have we had any models come in since? I don't think so. There you go. There's your long range NAM for you. That's a really good look with the NAM. Just because of how much this is pressing, that'd be a really good look. You can see where our highs and our high pressure is in a really good spot. Mixing issues for Berks Wednesday, Thursday. Potentially. It's still a little too early to see. But potentially. This will be one where it won't be elevation dependent. It will be where the upper level energy tracks. From that point, figuring out where upper level low tracks. Because you'll stay cold, you'll snow all the way until the upper level low tracks past the latitude or overhead. Good cold air in place. Manchester, New Hampshire, Monday storm, really good spot. I think Manchester is in a really good spot. I would say like 4 to 8, 6 to 12 for Manchester. I think that's a pretty good bet. Be able to get into part 1 and part 2 of the system. It's the Reggie got. Let's see, RGM. Not all that different. Honestly, there's a pretty decent agreement between the GFS, Canadian, RGM. I mean, there's pretty decent agreement. Let's take a look at it. Actually, wait, I want to see where we have our surface low. Check the surface low, because this is a transfer, right? The upper level low moves across Ohio Valley. and then we see the transfer take place at upper level energy. We get a new surface low to form off the coast. Depending on where that tracks, that'll be the key. That'll be the key. Let's look at some ensembles. Jeez, I scared the crap out of me. I bet that showed up loud on the mic because my mic is sensitive too. There's just a water bottle popping. Pretty good consensus on the last run. A little bit more spread on this run though. Looks like a little bit more interior, to be honest. All right. Nothing crazy. Get a good. Again, this is hard to tell with just based on because we're looking at some of these can be tricky because when the transfer takes place, it can be tricky. So they can with transfer system like this can be a little tricky to figure out. I don't want to do that. But it seems like the GFS has more members transferring faster, regardless of location. Has more members transferring faster, which is a good sign. If you like the GFS. Canadian ensembles a little bit further east. Much more favorable, right? Almost all of them at this point have transferred, and our cluster is in a much more favorable position, right? The current GFS, the low was right overhead, and the euro was like out here. And all these on the Canadian are further out east, which is much more favorable position. Yeah, we got any more questions I can try to answer? Got no problem doing so. It can be about winter. It can be about Monday or Sunday, Monday, Wednesday. The winter again, whatever questions you got, I can try to answer the best I can. Any fantasy runs close? That looks interesting. Oh, just another interior bomb, shocker. Yeah, but we'll make the snow map tomorrow. Want to see a little bit more, just a little bit more data first. I'm not completely, if I'm not putting out the snow map, the night before, then that means I'm lacking a little bit of confidence. Wednesday, Thursday, stay all snow for I-95. I'm hesitant to say all snow just based on what we currently have. I don't want to buy into the models too much, but I am a little hesitant to say so just based on what we have so far. I do think there's a chance, or at least mostly snow. I don't want to say all snow, but mostly snow. I think there's a chance for for I-95. Maybe probably not. I don't know about Philly, but a chance for I-95 New York City northeastward to see mostly snow. There's a chance. There's a chance. But don't want to. I don't want to put all my eggs in that basket exactly. But I still think at a minimum there'll be a front end dump of snow, even if it's not major. Do I think the East Coast will see a big snowstorm this year? I mean, yeah, we're had some big snowstorms, um, but the actual coast seeing snow hasn't. That's the part that hasn't verified as much. That part has not verified as much. But I think if to not answer your question so literally, I do think that I have a hard time believing that we won't see like a widespread big time nor'easter. You know that good I-95 interior northeast special. You know that just boom, just drops. You know that widespread, 10 to 20 inches of snow. I have a hard time believing that it's not gonna happen. Hard time believing, but maybe we don't. It's possible. It's possible. But I do think February will be better. I think February will be better. I'd be surprised if we didn't have a big time snowstorm February, March. Again, January's turned around from December. Again, January has been pretty, but January it's turned around a little bit. We've had some minor snow events, especially New England has made out much better in January than like New York City. Again, we're picking at straws a little bit at this point, but you got to work with what we got. You got to work with what we got, and I think there's still some promise. There's still some promise. I wouldn't give up just quite yet. I think there's still a long way to go this winter. Still 2.25 months left of potentially really good winter to work with. Yes, you can still see big snowstorms in March and April. Peak winter though, probably only a month. Yeah, probably only 6 more weeks of like peak winter to work with, and then March to mid-April, or mid-March to mid-April is kind of the back half of just hoping we can get that dynamic system to come through and drop some snow. But yeah, all right. That's all I got. I appreciate everyone that came in. We will stream tomorrow night, almost for sure. But until then, I'll be on Twitter. You'll definitely see me on Twitter. I appreciate everyone that came in. If you got more questions, you can hit me up on Twitter, DM, or comment, whatever, at me. Do what you got to do. Until then.